Hi everyone, it's Desiree, and I am here with day 20, 5 more to go, of my Christmas series for 2020, and I do hope you all are enjoying it with all of the different techniques, trying to pull very different things in, but you can see there is, some things that are just like a common thread. Okay, so dig into your scrap papers, whether it's, in this case, I'm actually using my scrap textured papers, which are the tonic specialty papers. These are just absolutely gorgeous, and the smallest piece I keep because it can always be used. But take some of those sheets, from each of these sheets that I had, I was able to cut 3 strips. So you don't have to cut a lot. And so the strip is whatever the width I made it by 8.5. I then have some pieces of copier paper, very thin copy paper. This is where I'm going to layer these strips onto, because then it'll be easier to die cut or cut into instead of using an 80-pound weight cardstock. So let's dive right in. So I dug into my stash for some sentiment sets, and I'm going to be using the Altenew December to Remember, the Simon Says stamp Merry Christmas. That is, I think, my favorite sentiment. The My Favorite Things Handwritten Holiday, and then Penny Black Christmas Sentiments. Again, they'll be linked down below if they're still available. On this scratch piece of copier paper, still can't speak, I just stamped the sentiment that I want to use just down. Now, you can see with the strips, I've cut shades of blue and silver and a little bit of pinks going on there. And then when it comes to the other side, more traditional colors, the reds, the golds, the coppers, the greens. But they do have just, that different type of twist because of the colors. You can use solid cardstock. You can use backgrounds. Maybe you are an ink smusher. Me, I am. If you love to create backgrounds, whether they're watercolor, from oxides, from water reactive dye inks, whatever it is you used, and you keep those, cut those into strips as well. Pattern papers. We hoard those. Okay, I hoard them. I'm going to admit it. I hoard them. There should be a group. But we can cut those into strips as well. So whatever you have fun. Create those strips and you can create a beautiful design. Again, yes, we're using a stamp for the sentiment, but I have my card base here, and the copy paper is cut to, to 8.5 by 3.5, because my slimline cards are going to be 4 by 9. So you can see that's the design that I created. Now I taped down using some washi tape that piece of copier paper just to keep it still, because my hand was sticking because I had laid down some double-sided tape just along the top, and you will see why. So attempting to fit this in my paper trimmer, and then just slicing down. Of course, that last one didn't get cut, but that's okay. I'll just use my scissors to trim that. I save these pieces that are being cut off because, again, they're still good for designs that I'm putting together. I'm going to cut away the copying paper. Now, I want to make sure that I cut it close to where it's folded, so that it's not seen. And there's your panel. It doesn't have to be even. So we've created this zigzag look, but it's actually going to go around the sentiment. That's why I stamped the sentiment down. Now, I'm going directly onto the card bases with my images on my slim lines. So we are going to do another slim line. So yes, as always, video will be long. I'm going to start gabbing about something. I'm going to start gabbing about giving you encouragement, because we can all do this. But I actually created 6 panels. Yes, and I'm going to show them all to you. Two of them are slimline, or for slimline cards. Here's where I'm using the My Favorite Things handwritten holiday. Two of the designs are going to be slimline. And again, we don't have to cover the entire front. Now, don't get me wrong, you can. I've done this before, but there was a video that I watched recently. I believe Christina Werner recently did this with strips. And she inspired me because you'll see when we get to that, she actually used die cuts. And I thought it was really cool. So she very much inspired me when it came to these cards in putting them together. But then I also thought, you know, why do we have to go straight across the panel? Why can't we create this type of a design going around a sentiment? It doesn't have to be even. Now, there are some of us where, yes, things have to be matchy-matchy, or what I refer to as matchy-matchy, 90-degree angles. Everything must be even numbers, and that's okay. Why couldn't you do this? Why couldn't you put this strip that I'm making, make it even on the top and the bottom of the sentiment? Why not? Why couldn't you just do it on each side of it? Come in from each side, making them even, doing that same thing, but using up these pieces. This is just another way that I can get you to dig into your stash. Use what you have. Because think of it this way, if you go through what you have, you get to buy more. Just saying. I'm just saying. But again, this is just another way to use them up. But again, I can't stress enough, it doesn't have to be the specialty papers. I just do have scraps of them, and it was just another way to dig into them, to have fun, and to create these different textures and looks with all of these wonderful foiled or matte cards that we have here. So when it comes to this, again, that piece is also going to go directly onto the card base. So I'm not going to be putting it on a design panel. I'm actually just going to go right into or onto the card base. Now this one, I kind of went up a little bit higher than where the tape was when it came to a couple of the strips. So I'm just going to carefully tear that away and just make sure that I'm above or bend that up so that it's not visible when it comes to that panel. One of the things that I do love about these textures is the colors are rich. Whether they're bright and bold, they still have a rich and elegant look to them. They're just very, very different. Now, you do have to be careful with these papers, especially the more textured ones. It's not a typical paper. And what I mean is, like, let's say if I go to put a strip down and I go to pull it up, like this one here, this paper will just shred. It's got a lot of fibers to it, but it's very delicate. So something to keep in mind, this paper is just not forgiving on strong adhesive. You can see I have shades of blue and silver put together, some grays, a little bit of a pink. I even added one of the copper strips from the red and green side. Why not? Again, but wanted to just have a theme when it came to these colors. Here I even added some gold strips or gold glitter to this. Again, just for that single accent that can add so much to the card. So remember, if you haven't seen my videos before, when you see my fingers tapping, that means I'm thinking. This video has some editing, but the editing that I did was when I walked away, forgot to stop the video, and it kept on, you know, filming. Or, you know, adding tons and tons of foam squares. Those are the areas that I'm editing out. So again, I'm keeping as much as I can in without driving y'all crazy. Because I can do that. I can definitely do it. Now, even if you have only a few textured papers, why not add some solid cardstock to it? If you have a background that you created that you kept, you don't need to cover it all up. Just put strips on either side of it just to give it a bit of an accent. There's all kinds of ways to use up what we have. As we come to the end of the year, what I do, all throughout the year I keep all my scraps, no matter what size. It's very scary. And I keep them like in a file folder for bills and stuff. And I just have them labeled by the rainbow color, and that's where I store them. Now, at the end of the year, this gets really wide and really thick. So at the end of the year, I will clean it out. You know, I'll go through, and if I've got pieces that I think what I'll look at is anything under 2 by 2, I won't hang on to. You know, I actually put them in a bag, because you probably all just started screaming, "Oh my God, she throws them away." No. There is a sweet lady that I work with, and her and her daughter are huge crafters, and they go to a location. Again, I don't like to give out too much information here, but they always get together at a campground, and they actually run crafts for the kids. So when it comes to paper pads that I'm no longer using, or cardstock, or ribbons and twines, and just some things that I have that I know I'm just not going to use anymore, I give that to her and her daughter, and they just have fun. I think they have a shed filled with craft supplies from what they're telling me. I think I filled it for them too. Because again, I'm always cleaning, I'm always moving things around, and I don't want things to go to waste. So I enjoy giving, and she loves getting these bags and going through all of the different things that are in there, and it's really cool because then her daughter comes up with crafts that they can make when it comes to this. So when I do have those little pieces, I will give them to her, and trust me, the things that they have these children make with them, it's absolutely wonderful. It's beautiful. So you can see I'm just continuing doing the same thing. Now, I created the 2 slim lines where we've got those jagged edges coming from the top. I created 2, one blue and one traditional colors on a diagonal. Now I'm creating 2 more panels, or this is the last panel, where I'm going either vertically or horizontally onto, again, the copier paper. And the copier paper for these were cut to a standard size. Oh God, I forget. 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And yes, that was a rude yawn. I am so sorry. Yes, I'm doing voiceovers at like very odd hours. So if it's first thing in the morning, not enough coffee. And if it's late at night, yeah, I should really go to bed, but can't. Just saying. I do find it very relaxing. You know how some people say they just love, yeah, you should see everything outside of my viewing area here, there, because I just pushed it out. These are our panels that we created for the standard A2 size. Now I'm digging into my dies, and I pulled out some Sizzix dies from my stash. One is the Snow Globe, and it's number 2. There is another one, which is really pretty as well. And then I also pulled out the 2 fresh baked die sets where you can make cookies. Last year I used these and I made a garland, actually for my sister. So I'm using these dies and just cutting these shapes out. So I saw the beautiful blue tones for the snow globe. Okay. And then these traditional colors for a tree and a stocking. And then I'll also be cutting a snowflake and a snowman. And of course, that'll come from the blue strips as well. And I totally forgot what I was saying before. So, yeah, so these are all going all over the place. And as you can see, you know, when you're seeing this, I'm already off on the days. Usually by the 20th. On the 20th, I'm showing day 20. On the 21st, I'm showing day 21. But yeah, the time just got away from me when it comes to my full-time job that I have. Yes, I do have a full-time job, unfortunately. and the days just got away from me as I'm coming close up to the holidays. So they're just gonna, and I did this last year too, where I really had to rattle them out in the last week. So I do apologize for that, but I will never just stop the series. I will always do 25 days of Christmas paper goodness. And that's what we'll call this. Or holiday. Absolutely. So I'm using my stamp positioner. Now you can see, since I chose a 4x9 card base, it's bigger than the stamp positioning tool. Which is okay. I just made sure I had my magnet, made sure that it was straight as best I could, and then just, you know, was careful when I stamped so that the paper didn't shift too much. I used my Recollections Gold and my Simon Says Clear ink, and I heat embossed that. I am a real fan of the silver and gold, and even the copper and their white embossing powder, fine detail. I think I get a perfect image right off the bat with one shot. I don't need to do it twice to get that smooth look. So now I'm going into the second sentiment. Now remember, the first one comes from My Favorite Things. This one's coming from the Altenew, December to Remember. And I'm going to prep my card base with my anti-static tool, stamp that down in my clear ink. I am stamping a couple times just to make sure that I do have the ink there. And I'm going to use my Recollections Silver for this one. Figured that went well with the blue. Now, it would look fine if I used the gold as well. So the blue can kind of go back and forth between silver and gold. Where the red, I mean, you could do the silver by all means, but for some reason it just doesn't look right for me. So I stick with gold. I stamped the base, or dyed, cut, wow, the base 3 times just to give it some dimension. And I also used the Penny Black stamp set, Christmas Sentiments, and used Joy to the World. I layered those together, and then I used my vintage photo to go around the edges. I'm going to add glue to the tips, and we are going to start creating our cards. I put glue all over the back, and this is going to go straight down onto the card base with a nice white frame that goes around it. And that is our first one. Going to do the same thing for the second one. Again, you could use your double-sided foam tape or squares and prop this up if you wanted to as well, to give it even more dimension. But I think with the textures of the paper, I really wanted them to be flat against the card base, just to give that full texture. That's what I was going for. For the snow globe, I'm looking, do I want to make this a portrait card or do I want to make this a landscape card? I decided on portrait, and yes, it is hanging over, but that's okay. We're going to trim that. Again, going straight onto the card base. You don't have to have that design panel to put your image on. Just putting this not so much in center, just a little bit off. You're going to use my double-sided foam tape from scrapbook.com. Sorry, took a little bit of sip here of my tea. And then we will get that down directly onto our card base. Once that's down, I will trim off the edges using my long shears to get a nice clean cut. For our next card, so I've got the tree. I fell in love with those greens. Now, again, when you put your double-sided tape on the copier paper that you're using, make sure you've got a good amount. You can have holes like I did with the snowman. I lost the top of his hat. Again, it all depends on where I'm cutting. But you want to make sure that you do have the image covered with the double-sided tape. So I pulled in my Simon Says Merry Christmas sentiment stamp, I love the stamp. I just love the font, I love the image. And if you saw that, I pointed because that was an aha moment. So I prepped my, I went to black cardstock, and I want this to be gold embossed. I am a fan of the black cardstock because it does make images pop. it pulls out those colors, makes them brighter, makes them stand out more. I'm going to do the same thing and stamp the image, but this time I'm going to put it towards the top, and I'm using a very deep red cardstock. I am also going to put it on an angle, just a little bit, and you will see why. So instead of going directly onto the card bases, I did pull in a piece of cardstock that was cut 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I'm now adding the gold embossing powder, and I will heat set these with my embossing, with my heat gun. There you go, forgot that. And you can just see how it just brightens. Even on the dark red, the gold just truly shines when it comes to that image. So I'm using my microfiber cloth just to clean off the anti-static powder. The microfiber cloth does a great job cleaning that up. Going to add some double-sided foam squares to each of these images, and you can see I kind of put that stocking in like it was hanging off. So that's why I did take that sentiment and just tilt it just a little bit. And this tree is going to sit right on top of this sentiment, so it's almost as if it's becoming part of it. So I took advantage of that loop that was right there at the top. I'm going to glue these panels onto my standard A2 size card bases. Again, that's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and they are top folding. The vintage photo did make an appearance in this video, and I went around the red. Doesn't have to be a darker red that you use, but you can simply use that vintage photo just to heighten those edges of your card. I did not do that with the black, but these are what the two cards look like. And that black one with that tree is just my favorite. I love the way that it pops. So these are the 5 cards that we created, and making all of these cards from the time that I cut the strips until the time that I completed this took about an hour and a half. So in an hour and a half, you can have 5 beautiful cards. Dig into your stash and have fun with your scrap papers. I will link the products that I used if they are still available down below. If you have any questions, make sure you leave those down below. I'm getting caught up. It's a good thing. Again, I do hope you're enjoying this series, and I thank you so much for taking the time to stop by. Make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss any future videos. Smile, laugh, it helps. Continue to stay safe and healthy. And until day 21, remember what's most important to me. Always be creative, everyone. See you next time.